Hey guys, back. So I this is part two of my video about my waking up story. My first one was gonna be the entire thing, but I had a little bit of a camera snafu. So actually this works out better because they're getting to be kind of long, and it's just better to make these little more bite-sized videos, so to speak. So let me just start right back up where I was. So I guess this is a story of my waking up, but also just kind of the story of the Jehovah's Witness religion impacting my family. So at the end of my last video, I was kind of going over some of the abuse that was happening with my mom and dad, and just some of the situations that I remember. What I don't want to gloss over, though, is kind of our role in the congregation and the impact that being a witness was having. So my dad, because he had been disfellowshipped when he was, much younger, before I was born, and reinstated, well before I was born. I guess I kind of glossed over that. He was reinstated within maybe, like, I think it was short. It was like, 6 months to a year. It was like a very insignificant amount of time. So he wasn't made a ministerial servant until I was, I don't know, old enough to remember. So I must have been like kindergarten or first grade. So he was made a ministerial servant, and he was so happy. So my dad is a true believer. He has lost himself completely into the religion. He has no identity outside of being a Jehovah's Witness. And, him and his dad didn't get along when he was younger. But once he was married, moved away, I was born, he's getting into his 30s. He was kind of wanting to be more like his dad, and kind of using him as like a template for how he wanted to be and the ideal witness. My grandfather, once again, was the presiding overseer in our hall, which was another thing that, my dad just really wanted to live up to his dad. So I loved our religion. Me and my dad talked about it all the time. We did our family study, which I guess is called family worship now. I don't know when that happened, but when I was little, it was just family study. So we did that all the time. My mom and dad bought me a little tape player and put it next to my bed. And at night, I would fall asleep with the greatest teacher and Bible storybook tapes playing next to my face. So I could recite them verbatim. And actually, kind of funny, the pink book was the greatest teacher book. And the tapes were pink. And it was Brother Barr that was reading it. He had a very distinct voice. So we were at a district convention once, and I don't really remember this, but my mom remembers, and Brother Barr was in town. He was giving a talk, and when I heard his voice, and I said, Mommy, it's Jesus," because he read the Jesus book, the pink one. So I was fully indoctrinated, really, really young. And because I was so happy, I loved it. When I was in kindergarten, I went to a Jehovah Witness kindergarten. It was a woman in another hall who had, made this little preschool / kindergarten in her house. And then once I went into public school, as I did go to public school, I was the only witness, like, in the school, but I was kind of okay with not celebrating birthdays, not having the candy and the cupcakes. I was okay with not being involved in a lot of stuff. And sometimes it would suck, like, after Christmas, to come back and everyone has like new stuff and they're all talking about everything that they got. You feel a little left out then, because it's just another day, and all of my friends have like really cool new stuff, and I'm the same as I was before Christmas break. Here I am. So that was kind of lame. But I got, some of the kids would pick on me a little bit, usually just about like flag salute, because I was the only kid not putting my hand over my heart. So I would get a lot of, hey, do that. You put your hand over your heart. I got that kind of stuff. My mom, who during all this time of me, being young, she was a stay-at-home mom. Like I had said before, as my dad somehow fell into this amazing factory job, was just making tons of money. So I think she felt sorry for me, even though she had grown up like that too. But she just felt really, really bad that I was going through this, and it didn't bother me. But I had said this in another one of my videos about birthdays. She put this little package of jelly candies into my backpack, and told me that if the kids were having cupcakes or candy for a birthday or whatever, that I could have these candies, and then I wouldn't feel so left out, which is just so sweet. It makes me want to cry now when I think about it. It's a really, really nice thing that she did. But I didn't even really feel like I needed them. I wasn't upset. So we were a very exemplary family. I got to do a part in an assembly once when I was like little. This is one of my first memories, maybe 5 or 6. All I had to do was get on the stage. We were at the Tacoma Dome in Washington. This was probably like, I don't know, 1990 or 91. And all I had to do was pretend like I just woke up and like run to my grandparents that were, playing my grandparents. And I had my book of Bible stories. I'm like, I just had to walk on like I was rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, then ask them to read me this story, So that was very exciting for me that I got to do that. My mom, my dad was like real gung-ho about going to all the meetings. We went out in service every Saturday. Some of my earliest memories are being at the door and butting in, when I was real little, like butting in to the grown-ups and being like, excuse me, I'd like to show you this in my Bible story book. I like holding it up and like telling them who these people are, and like, it's perfect, right? If you're trying to sell religion to a stranger at a door, then you need a little kid because they were not gonna say no to taking the magazines from me. But my mom was so depressed. Oh my God, she was terribly depressed. I remember her being in bed pretty much all the time. And it's sad actually, because I feel like a lot of my memories from back then, I'm so sorry, I keep allergies are just kind of bothering me today. Most of my memories from back then are of her being in bed. And that kind of sucks. I'm not mad at her about it. It's just, it makes me sad for her, because now I'm at the age that she was when all of that was happening. And I just feel really like, if that were me, someone would need to intervene and help me, because she was just obviously depressed. And she was going through a lot of abuse, and she would go to the elders, because you're supposed to. And they would tell her to be more submissive, to go home, pray more, go out in service, and be a better wife. And then he'll stop doing that to you. He wasn't counseled. He was made a ministerial servant. They were moving him towards being an elder. Nobody cared. Nobody cared what happened to my mom. In fact, at one point she had told one of the elders, I'm afraid he's going to kill me. And the elder said, well, let him kill you, which perfectly demonstrates their attitude towards women. Yeah, we were just very, very spiritual. You can imagine how surprised I was when I was about 9 years old, and my dad went on one of his business trips. He went on a lot of business trips back then, to Chicago. So he's thousands of miles away, and my mom got a U-Haul truck, and her brother and his wife and some of their kids came out and helped us pack up the house in the middle of the night, so that she could run away from my dad while he was gone. Excuse me. What she told me was, we're leaving, we are moving to Missouri. So she was going to go back to her home state. And we're going to live next to your aunt and uncle and your cousins. And I was okay with that. I was kind of like, oh, cool, because my best friend in the world was my cousin. And she was there, you know, she had come with her mom and dad. She was a little bit older than me. I just worshiped the ground she walked on. I was like, oh, sweet, we're gonna live next door to my cousin. Yay, I'm happy. So I wasn't too upset. So there's a U-Haul in our front yard, and they're packing and moving things around. A witness just happened to drive by our house, and at night, and it's dark out, and slow down and look up at our, like, what are the chances of that? So then my grandfather and another elder all of a sudden pull up, and I was, Papa, you know, yay, guess what? We're moving, you know, just. So they went in and took my mom into the dining room, and I didn't hear anything that was said or see anything, but I know that they were trying to talk her out of leaving and telling her that this is wrong. And I guess my aunt came in and started to yell at them, because they knew, my aunt and uncle knew that my mom was being abused and what she was going through. And so she started to yell at them, and they said, both of them told my dad later that when she entered the room, a demon came in with her, and they could feel that there was a demon in the room. And so they just left. They didn't even listen to her. What is it with the witnesses and demons? Anything they don't like, or they can't explain, or, you know, anytime they're faced with anything, it's a demon, right? Like, anyway. So, me and my cousin were in the garage, and we're playing with boxes, you know, and my grandfather was running out of the house, and my mom was behind him, and she says, wait, come back. And he just kept walking, and he was going to the car, and I said, bye, Papa. And he turned around and he came to me, and he got down and handed on his knee and wrapped his arms around me and said, I'm so sorry. And I had no idea what he was talking about. And he just left. I don't know why that makes me so sad. So we left, and because everyone was now aware of what was happening, we went to a family member's home that was maybe an hour or so away, and they hid me at a friend of a friend's home overnight, because now it became an issue of I was going to be kidnapped or taken. This is a really, really rough time in my life, so sorry if I get a little choked up. So I spent the night in that that U-Haul, in the cab of the U-Haul, outside of a house that I didn't even know who lived there, because I was taken by one of my much older cousins, and he didn't really know what to do with me. He's like 18, you know, so I slept in the cab of that U-Haul that night. And then the next day we drove to Missouri, and that's about a 3-day drive if you just drive straight through. I've done it lots and lots of times. So my mom bought us a house somehow. Not quite sure how she managed all this, but she got us this little house in this very, very small town. And I was just happy as a clam. My cousin was there. It was exciting to kind of be in a new place, and kind of out in the country, whereas we had, you know, lived closer to town, you know, or in the city the rest of my life. So this was a really, really cool thing for me. And the only problem I have is that I miss my dad so much. There was a picture of my dad on the wall that we had at our house from back when he was, you know, like maybe 19 or 20, just a young guy. And I told my mom that I wanted that. I wanted that picture. And I don't know why. I think somewhere in my mind, I knew that we were running away from him and that I might not see him again. But I don't remember like thinking that clearly, but it was a feeling. And I was like, okay, well, I want that picture. That's mine. My mom said, okay. And my aunt took it and threw it away when neither of us were watching. And my mom was very upset that she had done that because that was supposed to be for me. Um, so, um, so we were going to the Kingdom Hall in this small town. My uncle, my mom's oldest brother, he was an elder in that congregation. These are all witnesses, okay? All of this bullshit this is all witnesses. Um, so I think I got to talk to my dad on the phone like maybe once or twice. Um, one of the times that he had called was to tell me that my dog was dead. My dog got hit by a car and died. And it was like, it was just one thing after another. I really love that dog. So it was a really, really rough moment. And I didn't get a whole lot of sympathy about that from like my mom. She was I don't know, she was kind of mad that he had told me that, and then she was kind of mad because I was reacting very, very dramatically. It was a really horrible thing. But he didn't really tell me like what was going on. Neither one of them were telling me what was going on. They very rarely spoke, and I think it was just kind of sad, like my mom was very sad. And so anyway, I started going to this school, and I, at recess every day, I remember going out into the field and standing by the fence and looking down the road because it's like a one-horse town with like no stoplights. So like a one-room schoolroom, just sit there and look down the road and wonder if my dad was going to come driving up any minute. So my mom, you have to be really, really scared to do what she did. They were married for 15 years. She had been through a lot. And, I don't blame her for what she did or what she felt like she had to do. I don't know what it's like to be beaten or abused like that by somebody. So, I was upset with her for a long time, but now that I'm older, I'm not upset with her anymore. I see that as a move of desperation and fear. So anyway, one day I'm at my house and I'm on my bike and I'm just riding it around the block there, and there was a car that I'd never seen before. Was in the driveway, or not the driveway, but there was like an alley behind our house, and it was down at the end of the alley. It was a red Grand Prix. If you remember those, it's 93, they're kind of ugly. And it had black tinted windows, and there was someone in there holding a cigarette outside, like on top of the car holding a cigarette. So one of the times that I came past that car, I heard someone calling my name, like whispering, and I stopped, I turned around, and it's my dad, and he is crouched down next to that car, and he's got on a hat, like a like a detective hat, and he's doing this. He's come here, and I hopped off my bike and I ran to him, and daddy, and he grabbed me and he scooped me up and he threw me on that car and we took off. And it didn't take me long to realize what was happening, that I was being taken from my home. He had been sitting outside of the house all day. He had somehow figured out where my mom lived, and once he figured out where we were, this is all things I learned later, he went to the police, and they said, sorry, the police in that town that we lived in, they said, sorry, but you're married to her and we can't do anything, right? So, you guys are married, you don't have any sort of like separation or child, visitation thing, so she can take her kid wherever she wants. There's nothing we can do for you, which is why he went ahead and kidnapped me off the side of the road and left my bike on the side of the road for my mother to find. So that moment in the car was like, that was the worst. That was a really, really bad moment, realizing that I was being kidnapped. And I was happy to see my dad. I hadn't seen him in months, and I had spoken to him, like I'd said, just 2 or 3 times maybe. but I put my head down on his hand, was on the gear shifter, and sobbed and begged him not to do this. Begged him. Or begged him to let me go home and just get my doll. You know, that's, I had a Cabbage Patch Kid that I really, really loved. So it was kind of my security blanket at the time. So I begged him to take me back there and to not do this to me. But he didn't say a word. He didn't say a word. So we drove and we got to a payphone, pre-cell phones. We got to a payphone, and my dad, I guess, something else I learned later is that he got out of the car, he went to the payphone, he called my mom at that house, and she didn't answer, so he left a voicemail. Because what happened at our house is my mom found my bike on the side of the road. And I don't have kids, but I don't think I need to have kids to know what that would do to a mother. So he left her a message on the answering machine saying, I have our daughter. I am driving to St. Louis. We were a couple of hours from St. Louis. It says, I'm driving to St. Louis and I am going home, and you are welcome to come home whenever you want, but that's where we're going. Well, we didn't go to St. Louis. He went to Tulsa instead, which is the opposite direction, because I have family in St. Louis, and he knew that they would be at the airport. And this is also pre 9/11, you know, so people could just walk up to the gate. So all of the flights going back to where we lived had my family members standing at the gate, every single one. So we went to Tulsa instead. And he stopped at we stopped at McDonald's. There's this really cool McDonald's in Oklahoma. It's kind of like a truck stop too. It's over the freeway. It's like this, there's nothing and nothing for miles and miles. But then all of a sudden, like, you're flying down the interstate, and then there's this really cool McDonald's restaurant that's over the freeway. It's really cool. So we stopped there, and you know, he let me play and have, you know, get a Happy Meal. And, you know, I was a little bit happier then. I love my dad. I was very happy to see him. He called my grandparents on a payphone there, my grandparents back in Washington, and I got to talk to them, and I hadn't spoken to them. I can't even remember the last time. Last time I talked to my papa was at our house when he told me he was sorry. So I was really happy to talk to them, and I love to fly. We're gonna get on an airplane. So we went to Tulsa, got on a plane, and came home. And when we got home, there was all of my family and a lot of the congregation at our gate with balloons and flowers and congratulations balloons for my dad. Like, this was this big plot, you know. My whole family was kind of in on this, about how he was going to go to Missouri and kidnap me. And I guess there could be a case made for my mom kidnapping me as well. So she did. They both kidnapped me. But my mom's way was not quite as traumatic. I will forever be scarred by my experience of being snatched off the road when I was 9. Also, my mom was in absolute fear for her life. And she was completely, I don't know, what's the word? She's a very isolated person. She didn't have a job. She didn't have a career. She didn't really finish school. She didn't go to college. She went from living in the Ozarks to living with my dad and having a baby. You know, she just didn't understand how to handle things. And she was afraid. So she ran away. So I just want to make sure that I get that across, because for years and years I was mad at her instead of my dad. And it took me growing up and experiencing what it is like to be a woman in this world sometimes to understand what my mom was probably going through. So anyway, back to my story. So my dad took me to, he did the same thing. Because my mom had friends and family in Washington too, so he hid me at different places. I was kind of being taken all around. That's in the middle of school year, by the way. This is third grade for me, which is why I barely passed third grade, because I went to like 3 different schools, and half the time I was being drugged all over the country and hidden. Like, and I can't believe nobody cared that I wasn't in school. It's just so weird. Or like, the state or the government didn't, like, get on my parents for truancy. Anyway, so my mom did eventually have to come back. She had to come back to Washington and separate legally from my dad so that she could get me back. So she sold her house in Missouri and moved back to Washington and separated. And at this point, my dad had me hidden at my grandparents' house. And I remember the day that it happened because a whole bunch of witnesses came over, and we're kind of, sitting around my dad and like, oh, poor guy. And that's when I realized that my parents were getting divorced. It was in that moment. All that other shit didn't make it settle in. So my dad told me that I needed to talk to the elders about my mom. And the first time I had seen my mom since I was snatched off my bike, my dad let her come to our house that he was living in now. That had no furniture in it. It was just a shell of a house. It really sucked. He let her come to the house to see me for about 20 minutes. And she brought her friend, a good friend of hers. And I don't really remember what we talked about, but I remember it was really, really short, and I was very confused. I didn't understand what was happening. And my mom was trying really hard to be diplomatic with me and not scare me. That's the thing. I always feel like my mom always tried not to scare me, and my dad was always trying actively to scare me. But she told me, if the elders talk to you, you don't have to talk to them. She told me you don't have to say anything to any of the elders about any of this if you don't want to. And about that time, my dad came barging in and told her to get out, because her friend had, popped off and been mouthy at my dad. It pissed him off. So they had to leave, and I felt like my dad had kicked her out while I was seeing her. So I went in the bathroom and locked myself in there and cried. Sorry. So about that time, my dad, my poor dad, he got his company that he worked for, the union that he was in, went on strike. So they're getting divorced, right? Their divorce has started, and they were fighting over custody of me. They had decided to fight over custody, and it's just like this battle to the death between my mother and my father. But his company goes on strike, and because he was paying alimony to my mom, paying a lawyer, paying our house payment, which was very, very high, and they had 2 cars that he was also responsible for, he had to cross the picket line because he had to go to work. He had to. It was the worst possible thing that could have happened to him. It must have been terrible. So you know how they treat you. They threw nails down in the parking lot so he couldn't leave, or trying to break his windows, break his windshield when he went through. It was just really, really crappy. So I had, right there in the beginning, my mom and dad had like equal custody of me. So I was 4 days with my mother and 4 days with my father to coincide with his days off. But during that time, he had to sell our house. And, the cars went, and we had an RV and a boat and all this really cool stuff, and all of it, it's all gone because he had to pay a lawyer. So we moved in with my grandparents, and or he moved in with my grandparents, and so my days off were spent or sorry, my days with my dad were spent at their home. And my dad couldn't leave. He couldn't leave. So there were some visits with my dad that were spent just with my grandparents and talking to him on the phone, because he couldn't get out of the parking lot because they were threatening him and he was too afraid. So I know. And you know what sucks is, like, it's not that he didn't, like, him crossing the picket line had nothing to do with the strike. It had everything to do with the fact that he was desperate for money. It's just really, really sucked. So anyway, his company, once the strike was over, they laid everybody off, and then they went out of business. So then my dad had to go back working for his dad for his janitorial company, and also was living there with them. The next part of this story is their divorce and their custody battle, and just kind of how that all unfolded. This video is about 30 minutes long, and I think I'm going to go ahead and stop this right here and then start a part 3. There will probably be another part after that too, but I just want to kind of make these videos a little bit easier to digest. So you know, if you would like to, go ahead and click part 3, and I will tell you the rest of this story. Thanks, guys.